before we get going. I'm always giving out for not doing them. I'm like, did you take a photograph? I'm like, no, I didn't think about it.
Hair.
You're gorgeous. Sorry, say cheese. Gorgeous. Massive.
Massive. Okay, so smiles all round for the first start of it. Well, I'm absolutely delighted to have here two powerhouses of women. I've only met Charlotte for the first time on the screen here, but I have met Donna many, many times. And because of her expertise and how she runs her business, I really wanted to get her in here to speak to you guys. Donna has won awards for her business. She is the most people person I have met, and in HR, I think she's going to be somebody who you can really depend on and will have your back. Donna and Charlotte, you're most welcome. Donna, introduce yourselves and your business and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for that lovely intro. No pressure. No, honestly, thanks for having us on. I feel that, and you'll find this hopefully from myself and Charlotte when we're talking, we just want to really support small businesses from a HR perspective. So what we do is, my name obviously is Donna. I'm the director and CEO of Donna Reilly People and Wellness. And we, as a company, focus on building positive people solutions. And we do that really from three main areas. The first one is HR consultancy, which we're here to discuss today. So we, as I said, support SMEs, so small businesses who say, built a business from a place of passion and now have a team and are kind of going, oh, I don't know what to do from a HR perspective. We come in, we offer advice, guidance, consultation, and just help them feel that bit of safety and security from a people perspective. And we really try to focus on the positive side to stay out of the more negative side, if you like. And the other thing we do is we build wellbeing workshops and programs for companies of all sizes, all shapes, all sectors, which could be anything from a 1-hour workshop on mental health right up to a year-long wellbeing program, which covers multiple areas of wellbeing. And then finally, we offer coaching and development to, again, companies of all sizes and sectors. Really, that's more for like your senior leaders or your CEOs to just take a bit of time out for themselves to offload, to action plan, to set goals for the future. So that's a bit about us. We have a team of about 20 people, mixture of employees and associates. So I have Charlotte here with me today. So Charlotte is one of our HR consultants, but has a breadth of knowledge on all things HR. So what we really want to do, so we asked everybody to send in questions. So I know, Deirdre, you sent them to us. We've collated them and answered them as much as we can. Some of them are so broad, some of them are a little bit more specific. So we'll try to get to as many as we can. What I will say is that in absolutely no way, shape or form is this to be expected to be legal advice in any way, because obviously we're taking the question at face value without knowing the context or set of circumstance around it. So if you're ever stuck on anything, we share all our details at the end. Please feel free to reach out. But what we're trying to do is keep this as high level as possible so you have a really good understanding of your role from a HR perspective. And then, as I said, if there's any questions unanswered at the end, please do reach out to us and we can arrange to support you from there.
Super. Thanks a million. And you know what? Like, that is so key, I think, for somebody starting a business, is knowing this before you start employing staff, rather than something happens and then you're like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that, I should have done the other. And I love the fact that it's small businesses, because most people that are going to be watching this are thinking of starting a business, have just started, are probably not employing people yet, but down the road they will be employing people. So I think it's a really good starting point and to have some of this key knowledge. And I know, again, we are recording this in May of 2024. If you're watching this after that time, obviously laws can change and things can change. So Donna's information will all be in the notes below. So if you have any questions at all, please do either get in touch with Donna or get in touch with a HR company. Before you mess up is really, it's easier to fix 100%. It before you mess up, isn't it?
100%. And we work with people that literally, as you said, have no employees but want to, or right up to about 100 employees. Yeah. That's kind of our gauge. And sometimes, and Charlotte will I can see her head already starting to nod, they come to us when something has happened to go, oh, I should have got onto this a long time ago and I didn't, but we're like, just do it beforehand. So we will always, it's probably going to lead into the first topic. We will always start by saying, show us what you have from a contract perspective, show us what you have from a handbook perspective, and make sure that that's as up to date as it needs to be and includes everything that it needs to include. And then that's your foundation set. And after that, then you can do some of the nicer bits from the HR perspective around performance and training and all that kind of good stuff as well.
Super. So, and as you did say, we asked people to send in what questions that they would like to be answered. So one of the first questions was, and what you've talked about there, do you have to give a contract to an employee? And if you do, when do you have to do it? Who's going to answer that one?
I'll take the kind of contract and handbooks one. And I will say we've purposely answered these questions on notes. If you see us looking, we're referring to notes because it's not, it's funny, it's not insights. This is actually, it's legislation, a lot of it. So we want to make sure that we represent that really well for you guys. So basically for a contract, ideally you give an employee a contract before they start, ideally, right? That's what you should do. However, what you do need to do is within the first 5 days of starting with you, they need to get written terms of employment. Okay, so typically what that would be is their name, your name, their address of the employer, where they're expected to work, or if there's no fixed place, kind of the various places that they're expected to work. So if there's a florist with multiple locations, you'd call out all the locations that they have. Things like a title, if they have a formal title, a grade. So if you have like manager, assistant manager, etc. A high level understanding of the nature of work or a brief description of the work. So you are expected to X, Y, and Z. When they expect to start, so the date of commencement, obviously, and the duration and conditions of probation period. So we're going to talk about that as we talk about performance management, but how long probation is and some of the conditions around that, what type of contract it is. So is it fixed term? Is it temporary? Is it a permanent contract? Other things around remuneration. So like what's their base salary? Is there payment for overtime, etc. And that's the working hours. So they're kind of the general things that they need to have within the first 5 days of employment. Okay. And then within the first month, so the first 30 days, you need to give them the formal contract of employment, which would include all of that, and then any additional terms that they need to get. And again, we can share this afterwards. I'm conscious of giving a lot of information here. So anything additional to that would be things that you would have policies on around sick pay. So obviously from a legislative perspective, and we're going to talk about this later, there's some things that you need to offer in terms of sick pay, but some employers decide to do a bit more than that. So again, what's your policy around sick pay, notice periods, termination? Do you offer pension? Do you offer training? Do you offer any sort of work pattern conditions as well that might apply to shift work, etc., etc. So it's basically trying to call out as much as possible anything that relates specifically to that role. So as I said, ideally it's before they start. You need to give your written terms within 5 days and the full contract within 30 days.
And so for a new business starting out, where can they get this contract? Is that something that you supply or it is? Okay. Because obviously, like, I'm listening to all of that and saying, oh my God, okay, so how do I write all this down in a contract or whatever? Can I just download something? Or so would you design something specific for each business? You'd obviously go through and start to say, well, what sick pay do you want to pay, or what jobs? And how much detail do you need to go into with the jobs? Like, as in, we say in a flower shop, their job is to obviously arrange flowers, is to deal with customers, is to maybe deliveries, but it could also mean like cleaning the bathroom, because there's only 2 people in the shop probably working there. Would that be put into the contract, or is that just a given that you sort of...
It needs to be recorded somewhere. So if it's not in the contract, it would be in the job description. So again, this will lead into what Shara's going to cover later with performance management. We would always say, give people a job description. So how are you expected to measure their performance if there's not clarity from both perspectives on what's expected of them? So without that, it's going to be trickier to manage when there's underperformance, because the person will say, well, what do you expect from me? Where's that written down? Where's my job description? So as well as having a contract and handbook, which we talk about now, we would always say, give people a job description so they know exactly what's expected of them, and measure that on an ongoing basis. And again, that kind of leads into the performance management that we'll discuss later on, but include everything that's expected of them. Even if it is just once a month, but I would include any task that you would reasonably expect them to consider. But in the contract, you could do a brief outline of the duties and responsibilities. It doesn't have to be paragraphs and paragraphs, but you could say refer to job description for more information. So with the contracts, great question. Absolutely, that's something we do day in, day out for employers. So what we would do is just give them a template. So we'd say, well, tell us what's important to you. Tell us about everything you've said, sick leave and place of work. And we'll give them a template for a temporary or a fixed term or a permanent contract or whatever, all three, whatever they need. And they have that there. And then what we do is we do kind of retainer services for clients. So anything that changes from a legislative perspective, we will update their contract and notify them, look, here's your new version. Okay. You can easily go on to like WRC, and I think Citizens Advice would give some guidance on contracts as well. So like it's easily available, but to make sure that it's tailored to your business,
specific to you. Yeah, specific to you and your business. That's actually great advice. And you're talking there about a handbook then. So what's the difference between the handbook and the contract then?
The handbook's your Bible, basically. So the handbook, and this is not to scare anybody, could be 150 pages, right?
Wow.
That outlines all of your HR policies and procedures. So this is literally, as I said, it's your Bible. So your contractor would do a high level and might say refer to the handbook for sick leave policy, for grievance, for disciplinary. So then your handbook outlines things like grievance, obviously, disciplinary procedure, anti-bullying, anti-harassment, anti-sexual harassment. It would include a lot of information on leave entitlements. So say annual leave, sick leave, force majeure, adopted parental, maternity, carers leave. It would call it everything you offer from a leave perspective. And the reason that's important is there are absolute statutory requirements that every company, no matter who you are, have to offer. But then, as I said, some employers might offer more or might say, particularly around flexible work, and that's just changed recently. So we're working with a lot of teams now to go, what do you want that to look like for your organization? So the guidance is this, but what would you like to do? So again, that would all be in your handbook. Any sort of people-related policies like recruitment, selection, performance management, underperformance, managing that, probation, as I said, flexible working, conditions around pay, benefits, termination, retirement. It includes, as I said, everything. It's a Bible, but don't let it overwhelm you. And again, what we do is we have
that was my next question. Do you have a handbook?
Yes. We do. And they're the two things that we do first. Even if somebody comes to us and say, I'd love to do some training for my team, and we'll say, right, let's see your contract and handbook. Because it would be foolish for us to engage with somebody until we know they have the foundations laid correctly. So that's what we do. So we have like a big Bible of a handbook, but then we engage with companies to go, right, what's important to you? And then we understand, sometimes they have one already, and we take that and we update it. It's nearly easier if they have nothing, because we're saying, right, let's start from scratch. What's important to you? And we build it for them and give it to them. And again, if they're on that retainer type service, we'll just update that for them on an ongoing basis, so they don't even have to worry about it.
And if somebody has a handbook and their staff, so somebody's employing staff, they already have a handbook, can you change that?
Yeah. So your handbook is totally changeable. Trickier to change a contract. So the contract would usually refer you to the handbook, but a handbook, particularly in the last 18 months, they're changing on an ongoing basis because there's so much change around hybrid work and work-life balance, etc. Request and remote work. And so, absolutely, that's a fluid document that can be updated.
So really, the key, like I'm taking already, is get your contract and handbook in order before you even look at anything else.
100%.
Okay.
It's your safety.
Right. Yeah. Salary and pay we're going to talk about. Are employees entitled to a wage increase every year? Do we have to give, or does a business have to give an increase?
I'll answer that one then, Deirdre. So the first question would be, I suppose, is the wage in line with the national minimum wage? And if it is, then there is no requirement for an annual wage increase once it stays in line with that national minimum wage. Which at the moment for 20-year-olds and over is $12.70. Now, at the moment, the minimum wage is tending to go up on an annual basis. So I would say keep an eye on that. But unless it's defined in the contract, or unless there is like a company pay scale, there is no requirement for an annual increase.
Okay, great. And if so, we said looking at, again, we've new bank holidays. I think have we 10 bank holidays here in Ireland now? Like, how does that work? So are the employees entitled to get a full day's wages for the bank holidays? Do we have to pay that for now 10 bank holidays?
So if the person's working normal working day, which typically is most bank holidays are Mondays, but not all. So make sure to check. But if their working day is not typically a Monday, then they would be entitled to a 1/5 of their weekly pay for that bank holiday. So say if they worked on a Saturday, they didn't usually work on a Monday, 1/5 of their weekly pay would be to be paid for that bank holiday.
Okay. And is that going back to, so is that put into the contract, or is that put into the handbook, or where, or is that just the law?
That's a legal requirement for a bank holiday. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Super. Can we give employees €1,000 a year without paying tax on it? So, like, if we wanted to give a bonus now, I don't think any flower shop would be giving their staff €1,000 a year. But anyway, unless they were a really, really big flower shop. But how does that? Can you give a bonus at Christmas without it being taxable?
Yeah. So this was implemented a few years ago, and I know a lot of employees kind of heard the €1,000 bonus and kind of went, oh, how can I get this? So what it is there's a small benefit exemption scheme where employers can offer tax-free rewards to employees. It can be up to a maximum of €1,000, but they can't get any more than 2 a year. And it cannot be cash. So if an employer was thinking about giving a reward or a bonus, they can give the tax-free bonus in the form of a voucher. But there is no obligation for an employer to do this. It's not.
Okay. So that, again,
not a requirement. It's
a gift.
Dependent on the organization.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you'd see a lot of them would do like one for all at Christmas, that sort of stuff, because it's tax efficient for the employer and the employees are allowed to get it. But again, no obligation at all.
It's no obligation to do it. If somebody rings in sick, right, that morning, and like this can be obviously in every business, like people ringing in sick is a nightmare, but in the flower industry, I suppose, because everything is fresh, it's not like it can be done tomorrow. If they're not in today, it can be done tomorrow. So somebody rings in sick, do we have to pay them sick pay, or how does that work?
Okay, so an employee obviously, if they ring in sick, the question would be, as an employer, do they have a sick set, or is it an uncertified sick day? So uncertified sick leave is dependent on each company. Some companies have uncertified sick policies where they might pay if an employee doesn't have a sick set or a reason for being out on sick leave. There is, though, the Sick Leave Act came in 2022, and as of January this year, every employee has a right to 5 certified sick days a year. Now, it was 3 days last year, and it's going up to 7 next year. So again, keep an eye on what the kind of the
certified is with a doctor's note, yeah?
Yes. So there is certain criteria for people to be eligible for this statutory sick pay. So it means the employer will give up to 70% of the normal pay, which will be a maximum of €110 a day. The employee must have worked for at least 13 weeks for the company before getting statutory sick pay. They must be certified by a GP as unable to work. And then some companies have a more generous sick pay scheme. So it's whatever once they're meeting that statutory amount, if it's more.
Anything after that is by choice.
Yeah.
And is in the contract or the handbook.
Yeah. It should be referenced. Yeah. It should be referenced in both, really. And you can still get sick pay if you're on probation, if you're a trained apprentice or a paid apprentice, agency worker, and an intern, paid intern as well.
Yeah, so that's a really good example of we say, well, what do you want your policy to be an uncertified sick pay? Is it something that you want to pay? Is it something that you're not willing to pay, and you'll wait till it's certified and then let the statutory kick in?
Right, and I think that's actually really important, that you guys or a HR company actually asks the question of the business to make them think about what do they want to be paying. And obviously, can that change then? So if you have an employee that's with you for 10 years and they're a really loyal employee and they get sick, you can obviously choose to up it and pay them their full pay, or pay them 75% for a longer period of time. Does that affect the next time they're sick? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the good. So firstly, what I'd say with all benefits, you can't have one for one and one for the other. So benefits should apply to all employees. So that was again something that came in for fixed term workers. So that if you're on a fixed term contract, I shouldn't be at a disadvantage to the majority of benefits. Again, it's we'd be getting into too many specifics, but you shouldn't be discriminating between employees, or you shouldn't be having one set of benefits for one, one set for another. I would say try and keep it consistent across all.
Okay, right. That's really good advice. Yeah, because I'm sure it is like, and I'm sure that probably can happen, that you have a staff that's there for 10 years who never rings in sick, and you have a staff that's there for a year and is always ringing in sick. Yeah. And then the one that's there for 10 years does actually genuinely get sick, and you feel that you need to look after them in time.
And
again,
there's always discretion. But like I would say, try and keep it consistent at all times.
Yeah. And again, I suppose we keep going back to the same thing. Before you make a decision on anything like this, consult the professionals and say, are you doing it right, rather than doing it and then realize and actually effect up. You need to, performance management. Okay, I'm conscious of time because I don't want this to go on so we will try and get as much as we can in within the time frame that we have sort of allowed for this. If we don't get all the questions answered, please, you can obviously put the questions here in the comments, or go over to Donna's page on Instagram or Facebook, or drop her an email and get in contact and message her if you have any specific questions. But Charlotte, can you talk to us about the systems and processes that should be in place to help employers manage their employees' performance?
Yeah. So we had quite a lot of specific questions in relation to performance management that would be really hard to answer without the context in much detail. So what I'm going to kind of talk through is the kind of broader processes. Donna's touched on some already, but I'll go through them in a different way in terms of how they relate to performance management. So obviously establishing the contracts, a contract of employment and an employee handbook is so important at the start. Like Donna said, it can be a Bible. It can, for contracts, it can be a reference point for addressing certain issues in terms of hours, pay, entitlements. The employee handbook can be a reference for things like code of conduct, other policies like health and safety, or mobile usage if someone's on their phone too much. So all these policies can be outlined in these two documents and can be really easily referred back to if somebody is underperforming or a certain issue arises. As we touched on before, then job descriptions. We really ask all of our clients to really look at having robust, accurate, and detailed job descriptions, which have daily tasks, like what you were saying, Deirdre, around, even if that means cleaning, certain things that may be outside of what they might typically do, just so that everyone knows what's expected of them. And again, it can be used as a reference point, both for meeting kind of goals and objectives, but equally for kind of highlighting if there are any kind of downfalls or issues going on at the time.
I actually love that point. That is, if you have it all listed, it's easier to manage performance, where there's no point in saying to somebody, well, geez, you're only making 2 bouquets in a day, you should be making 10, when they didn't know that they should have been making 10.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to basically assume that you're writing it as if they don't know what somebody doesn't know what their job is, and you are telling them exactly what you expect of them. Even if it's a florist who has years of experience, I think this still needs to be outlined, because sure, companies operate in different ways, and things can be different, and every company has their own goals and objectives in terms of demand for their products and stuff like that. So
amazing.
Probation then. So this would be written into the contract. It would also be referenced in the employee handbook, but probation is used, basically it'll be proportionate to the length of the contract. So if they were on a fixed term contract, it might be 3 months. It can't be any more than a 6-month probation period. And that probation period is used to determine the suitability for the employee in that role in particular. And during that probation period, it is, if you bring someone in and you think, okay, I'm going to give them a chance, and they just, time after time prove that their performance is not
Don't fit.
consistent, or it's not, they're not a fit for the company. Those conversations can be had, and that person can be let go in their probation period. Reasonably
Much easier.
Do they need notice or
No.
No notice? Okay, right.
So the probation, and I would always say, do not underestimate your probation period, because once you go past probation, it's much trickier to manage underperformance, or like conduct, or if the probation period is exactly what it says in the tin. It's a chance for them to see if they're a good fit and for you to see if they're a good fit. But you can end a probation very easily, or you cannot pass probation quite easy unless there's anyway, that's again specific. But it's do not underestimate the power of your probation period, because a lot of people don't. And actually, from last year, you're not allowed to really extend it unless it's exceptional circumstances. So before you go 6 months, you know what, I'll give them another 3 months, and we'll see. But now that's gone. It's 6 months and 6 months only. So again, even more important. So we would have a lot of processes where we say, we're at a 3 month 3 month mark, here's a template, and use this in the discussion. At the 5 month mark, here's a template, here's a letter you can give. So we provide a lot of templates to manage it really effectively, as a way, again, if things aren't working out too. So
ideally you'd be doing a 3 month review and then a 6 month review. So even at that 3 month point, you're able to flag, okay, here is where we're happy, here is where we need improvement. And then if you've got that gauge and that timeline, it's much easier to determine this, again, the suitability for the role.
Yeah. Fab. Gosh, yeah.
So then, sorry, moving on then. So feedback. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about the performance management process. So this, with any of the clients that we use or that we work with, we'll talk about it in terms of a cycle. So we're using this performance management cycle in order to set goals, monitor progress, having continuous conversations and evaluate the performance of an employee. So feedback would be a massive piece of this and part of this cycle. And these are having continuous ongoing conversations, giving feedback, being honest and timely with the feedback is really important. So if something happens and an employee does something and you forget about it, but then it festers or it gets bigger and then you're having to deal with it down the line, what we would really recommend is having the conversation there and then, as much as you can, in an appropriate way, and naming it so that it doesn't spiral into something bigger, or it doesn't become
yeah. And I can give an example of that being in a flower shop. Every flower shop will have their own sort of style, their own look that we say for funeral spray going out, that they have, that's the technique they use, that's the style they use. And every florist would maybe do it slightly differently. And I know a particular flower shop who has taken a lot of our staff on and our past students on, and the girls saying, oh my God, we have to do it her way. And I'm like, but that's her job. Yeah. That's her shop. That's her business. You have to adapt to that business if you want to work there. And I suppose the other side of that is, if they don't get feedback all along, it is going to piss the boss off, if you want to call it. And they don't know why she's getting pissed off with them. Yeah. So like, that's really good. A really good point. It goes back
to similar with the job description. If someone's not being told that what they're doing is not how you want it to be done, they're not going to know that. So it's just trying to keep it as informal as possible, have those conversations. At the end of the day, the employee might turn around and go, okay, this isn't working for me, which is, that's a different conversation. But I think the employer needs to set that expectation for the quality or the work that needs to be done. And it's also a much easier position to be in when you've had all these informal conversations and you've tried to put in this groundwork for the feedback and starting that performance management cycle. For if somebody is still continuing to ignore that and is still not getting it through choice or not, that then you can go down the performance improvement process, which as shortened as a PIP in the HR world, but there's informal and there's formal performance improvement plans which can be put into place, which are timelined, and they're kind of, okay, we're going to take so many weeks and these are the expectations, and if we don't see any progress within this time frame that's agreed by both parties, again, then your next step is a disciplinary process where you're kind of going down the different stages. Now, I won't get into that too much because it's a lengthy process. And again, with
like,
any
I think HR, Charlotte, in itself, that it's so broad, and like we are really literally tipping the iceberg here with
but
pointers.
I think it's knowing
really
that there's
pointers.
steps. It's understanding that there's steps, and you don't have to go straight to disciplinary, or you don't have to go to that. There are little steps in between that sometimes get overlooked, and these are really, really, really important, and actually kind of help avoid getting to the stage where you're doing a dismissal and you're getting rid of somebody because of an issue. So but at any point in that,
So
and at any point in that disciplinary process,
but I actually think I know the answer to it after having listened to you. So obviously within the flower industry, we have Christmas, we have Valentine's Day, we have Mother's Day. We have these peaks that are very busy peaks. Obviously, Christmas is the same time every year. Mother's Day is always a Sunday, and Valentine's Day can fall on any day of the week. What if your staff say, or your employee says, well, actually, I don't want to work on Sunday of Mother's Day, or Valentine's Day falls on a Saturday, or whatever the case may be, and they don't want to, they're refusing to work, or that they're refusing to work because they're already after taking on work for themselves within that time frame. Can you make them work, or is that back to the handbook, that they're told in the handbook that they must work those peaks?
You're learning, Deirdre, you're learning.
So my first question would be, is it laid out in the contract that overtime is a specific requirement? I think particularly florists and any other kind of service provider where they do have those peaks throughout certain times of the year, I would absolutely say to them, put it into your contract that it is a requirement. It should be a conversation being had with employees before they're even brought in. Look, just this is part of the job. These are our busy times. Is that a problem? Because if it is, and that can be flagged early on, and it might be the decision between taking on a new employee or not if they're refusing to work those hours. So again, it's about having it in the forefront of your mind to prevent problems kind of down the road.
Is it then a disciplinary thing if they don't work? Like if they refuse to work?
So it could be deemed, once there's no breach to any organizational working time act. So that details if you're asking somebody to work in excess of the hours that are deemed as legislation to be too many. If that is not being breached, an employee could be at risk of misconduct if they're refusing a reasonable request from an employer. However, getting to that stage, like it's also very hard to kind of make somebody come into work and do the job if they're refusing. So myself and Donna kind of bounce back and forth about this answer, kind of going, it's a tricky one. It is a tricky one.
Yeah, it is a tricky one. Yeah, it is.
And what we would find that, so say, as Charlotte said, it's a discussion that you'd have beforehand, you'd have it in the contract, you'd have it during onboarding. But what some people do is say, right, we'll pay in lieu. So say you can take, when we're at our quieter periods, do a reduced working hour week. So then you're going, all right, that's reasonable, that I know now.
That's actually a really good idea.
I'm going to be flat out for the few days leading up to it and the day itself. But then in the quieter period, I might be able to reduce it. Then I think that's extremely reasonable.
That actually is
a reasonable request.
Yeah,
and I do know some flower shops. Sorry, say that again.
I was just going to say, make it attractive to employees. Like pay double time if you can.
But that's exactly it, and that's I suppose what a lot of flower shops do, and they don't pay it until like the end of the month of Mother's Day month or Valentine's month. So that when you've done your Mother's Day work, you'll get paid an extra day or whatever at the end of the month for it. So, and it is, as you say, it's making it attractive, because obviously it is a peak, it is a really busy time, and sometimes it actually costs flower businesses more than they don't make as much money as people would think they make, because they need all of this extra staff in for it all at such a short time. All those flowers have to go out for one day, where at Christmas it's different, it's going out gradually over the month of December, but that's actually a really, really good point. I think this will probably be one of the last questions I'll ask you, but what can you do if and again, having listened already, I nearly know the answer, but if your employee is taking is on the phone or is taking longer breaks or smoke breaks, or I know a lot of people don't smoke now, but there is still quite a few smokers, smoke breaks or things like that during the day. What can you do about that?
So again, we're going back to a contract. Are the set hours of work detailed in the contract? Are rest breaks detailed in the contract? That would have to be in line with like I said before, the Organisational Working Time Act. So I mean, regular rest breaks every 4.5 hours, someone's entitled to 15 minutes. Every 6 hours of work, 30 minutes. So just kind of upskill, make sure you're informed with that information and make sure that it is incorporated and explained to employees. Yes, if there is issues in terms of people like that taking longer than is justifiably reasonable and it's affecting their work, you'd be wanting to bring them in and address the behaviour in a meeting forum, taking notes, looking for justifiable reasons. Sometimes people have stuff that goes on, and again, like the line of work that we're in HR, we're always trying to look at the people focus and kind of see, is there stuff that is going on for someone that is called, if it's a behavior that's never happened before and then it started to happen. You're looking for the reasons why. You're looking to be reasonable in the conversation and to have a positive outcome from it. However, there are people that may not be the case, and it could just be a behavior that persists. So then you'd be looking to manage that through the likes of a performance improvement process, like what I spoke about earlier, or potentially, down the road, maybe a disciplinary process.
And I suppose like that is giving feedback, and going back to what you were talking about earlier, is giving feedback from the get-go. If they're on their phone, say, look, we really don't, where rather than letting that behavior fester and grow and then trying to fix it, it's nearly too late at that stage.
Exactly. And the policies, you can have policies on punctuality, on mobile usage, and any breaches of those. It makes it a good reference point if there are breaches that you can then refer them to us, and it kind of gives managers and employers confidence when they can refer to something to know what steps are then next to follow.
What you have to do exactly, yeah.
And I think that's a really good point. Just before we finish up, that there's so many other questions that we obviously said we can't answer because we don't have the full context, but use your handbook to design your policy. So you can include a social media policy about what's expected, what's not. You can include something about mobile phone usage on the floor. You can, in the job description, outline that, yes, it includes cleaning bathrooms or cleaning rest areas or kitchens. So use it as they say, your foundation to go, what do I actually want my business to look like? What's important to me from a policy perspective, from a job description perspective, and we can help build that, or any other HR provider. It doesn't always have to be us, obviously. But what we would always do is say, we'll come in and do a session and take you out of it. We do a lot of these where we call them spotlight sessions, where we identify, we'll chat with the employer and go, what's important? What do you need us? What's that message you want us to deliver that you potentially is falling on deaf ears when you say it? And we'll come in and we'll go through a handbook or a contract, whatever it is, at a high level, and highlight 4 or 5 things that we really need to get across. And not only for the employee goes, oh, I'm protected from that. I didn't realize there was a policy there, or what I was entitled to from sick leave or annual leave. So it's a twofold. It's a win-win.
It is, yeah.
100%.
And I think that creates more of it. The employer feels, the employee feels that they're part of something rather than just being told you do this, 100%. You do that there is protection. Guys, I could talk to you for hours. Like, there's a load more questions, but this could go on for hours if we were to answer all those questions. But really, from what I am gathering from this is, it's going back to the first 5 minutes of this conversation, is the contract and the handbook are so, so important. And I love what you said, Donna, is that you design your handbook to how you want your business to run. And I suppose go through everything that annoys you, probably with your teenagers, because that's probably them. They're like that, they're on the phone, or they're taking too long breaks, or they're doing this and they're doing that. Is that then I think you can think then, okay, these are things that I don't want in the business.
Or we ask you. We have a deep dive questionnaire that we go where we're going to fire a load of questions at you and tell us your answer. And we go, right, now we can build something for you.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing. And you know what? Like, I have spoken with other HR companies before, and they just didn't bring it down to the basic. Like, and I'm not saying it's basic, but what I'm saying is just everyday language. You know, I think you guys have really opened my eyes up into just a normal everyday language of running a business. Obviously, there is a huge amount more to it when you're employing staff, but I think the key is obviously the contract, the handbook, and don't do anything until you get professional advice, like be it
100%.
You know, I think that's where people can mess up. Donna, Charlotte, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this. As I said, all the details will be in the notes below. If you want to get in contact with Donna or Charlotte, or just to even have a chat or send a message about something, or find out about getting your handbook done up before you start employing staff, and start off on the right track, and you can't go too wrong. Guys, thanks a million.
Love it. Thanks for having us. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Welcome very much. Bye.